You've probably seen their colorful pints in the freezer aisle, wild flavors, chunky textures, and names that feel more like inside jokes than desserts. But behind every scoop of Ben & Jerry's is a story that's just as rich as the ice cream itself. So who exactly are Ben & Jerry? Were they master chefs, business geniuses, or just two guys who accidentally built one of the most famous ice cream brands in the world? The answer is a little bit of everything, but mostly they were just regular friends who took a simple idea and ran with it. So let's get into it, right here on History of Simple Things. The Ben in Ben & Jerry's is Ben Cohen, and the Jerry is Jerry Greenfield. They met way back in 1963 as seventh graders in New York. Not exactly the origin story you'd expect for a global brand, but it gets better. They weren't top students, and they didn't follow traditional career paths. Ben struggled with a condition called anosmia, which limits his sense of smell and, as a result, his sense of taste. That might sound like a disadvantage in the ice cream business, but it actually shaped what made their products unique later on. Jerry, on the other hand, originally wanted to become a doctor, but got rejected from medical school. So instead of giving up, he teamed up with his old friend Ben to try something completely different, and that something just happened to be ice cream. In 1978, with very little money and no real business experience, Ben & Jerry decided to open an ice cream shop. But first, they needed to learn how to make ice cream, so they enrolled in a $5 correspondence course from Penn State. That's right, $5. No culinary school, no fancy training, just a basic guide and a lot of trial and error. They scraped together about $12,000, some of it borrowed, and opened their very first shop in a renovated gas station in Burlington, Vermont. Why Vermont? Honestly, because it was cheap, and because they liked the idea of living there. What they didn't realize at the time was that this small, cold state would become the birthplace of a global phenomenon. From the beginning, Ben & Jerry's ice cream stood out, and not just because of the quirky branding. Remember Ben's limited sense of taste? That led them to focus heavily on texture instead of just flavor. They started adding big chunks of chocolate, nuts, cookies, and other mix-ins to their ice cream. At the time, most ice cream brands kept things smooth and uniform, but Ben & Jerry went the opposite direction. Chunky, packed, and loaded with surprises in every bite. That decision turned out to be a game changer. Their ice cream wasn't just something you tasted, it was something you experienced. For a few years, they were just a local favorite in Vermont. But things started to change in the early 1980s. They began packaging their ice cream in pints and distributing it to nearby stores. This allowed people outside Burlington to finally try their products, and demand quickly grew. Then came one of their smartest moves. They leaned into their personality. Instead of acting like a corporate brand, they embraced humor, creativity, and a slightly rebellious tone. Flavor names like Cherry Garcia and Chunky Monkey weren't just catchy, they made the brand feel fun and human. By 1984, they were expanding rapidly, and Ben & Jerry's was becoming a recognizable name across the United States. But here's where Ben & Jerry really stood out, not just as entrepreneurs, but as people. From early on, they believed that business should do more than just make money. They built their company around a three-part mission: product quality, economic success, and social responsibility. They supported fair trade ingredients, environmental causes, and various social justice issues long before it became common for companies to do so. This approach wasn't just marketing, it was part of who they were. And it helped build a loyal fan base that cared about more than just ice cream. In 2000, Ben & Jerry's made a huge decision. They sold their company to Unilever, one of the largest food corporations in the world. At first, this seemed like a surprising move. A small, socially conscious brand joining a global giant? But the deal came with a unique condition. Ben & Jerry's would maintain an independent board to protect its mission and values. That meant even under corporate ownership, the company could continue supporting the causes it believed in. Today, Ben & Jerry's still operates with that same spirit, balancing business with activism. So, what happened to the two founders? Ben Cohen and Jerry Greenfield are no longer involved in the day-to-day operations of the company, but they remain active in social and political causes. They've used their platform to advocate for issues like economic fairness, climate action, and criminal justice reform. But in September 2025, Jerry made a much more definitive move. He officially resigned after 47 years. His reason was clear. He believed the company had lost its independence and that its social mission was being restricted under Unilever. He argued this went against the original merger agreement that was supposed to protect the brand's activism. Rather than stay and compromise, Jerry chose to walk away completely. Ben has remained outspoken on similar issues, and both founders now focus on advocacy outside the company. So, who are Ben and Jerry? They're not just the names on an ice cream pint, they're two ordinary guys who took a chance on a simple idea, learned as they went, and built something far bigger than they ever expected. They didn't start with expertise, money, or a grand strategy. What they had was curiosity, creativity, and a willingness to do things differently. And in the process, they didn't just change ice cream. They changed what people expect from a company. Because sometimes the best ideas don't come from perfect plans. They come from two friends, a $5 course, and a really good scoop of ice cream. Thank you for watching. If you have suggestions for our next video, feel free to share them in the comments below. We'll be sure to give you an acknowledgement for your contribution. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the history of simple things. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more stories woven through the smallest details.